Your soulmate needs to talk to you right away. Something important just happened. Do not scroll past this. Listen closely. This message is for you, and your heart may need to hear it today, because something happened that completely surprised your soulmate. Not the kind of surprise you see in movies, not the kind that makes news headlines, a different kind of surprise, personal, quiet, deeply meaningful. A realization that arrived when they were least expecting it. And listen to this. The day started like any other day. Nothing unusual, nothing dramatic, nothing that hinted that something meaningful was about to unfold. Your soulmate woke up and followed the same routine they always followed. The same responsibilities, the same plans, the same expectations. Everything felt familiar, predictable, ordinary. Yet sometimes the days that transform us the most look exactly like every other day at first. Because your heart needs this right now. Because life rarely sends a warning before a turning point arrives. Your soulmate had no idea that a quiet shift was already waiting for them. Stay with me, because this next part matters. As the morning moved forward, they stayed focused on their daily tasks without thinking much about anything deeper. They stayed busy, productive, distracted in the way most people are. There was always something to do, another responsibility, another task, another reason to delay thinking about what truly matters. Your soulmate was doing exactly that, staying occupied, staying in motion, keeping their attention fixed on everything except what was happening inside their heart. Because your heart needs this right now. Because sometimes people stay busy not because they have to, but because silence might reveal something they are not yet ready to face. Your soulmate did not understand that yet, but they were about to. And listen carefully. Around the middle of the day, something small happened, so small that most people would have ignored it completely. A memory suddenly appeared, just a simple memory. Nothing shocking, nothing extraordinary. A moment from the past, a conversation, a feeling, a reminder of something that once mattered. At first they pushed it aside. After all, memories come and go every day. Most disappear as quickly as they arrive. Yet this memory refused to leave. It remained there quietly, patiently, almost as if it carried a message. Because your heart needs this right now. Because some memories return for a reason. They do not come back to distract us. They come back to teach us something. Your soulmate was about to discover that. And listen to this. As the hours passed, that memory kept returning, again and again. No matter how much they focused on work, no matter how many distractions appeared, no matter how busy the day became, the memory stayed. Eventually they stopped trying to push it away. Instead they became curious. Why now? Why this memory? Why did it still carry so much feeling after all this time? Questions began to grow, one after another, and with every question came a deeper understanding. Because your heart needs this right now. Because curiosity opens doors that certainty often keeps locked. Your soulmate had just stepped through one of those doors. Keep listening because the next part changed everything. Later that afternoon they found themselves alone for a little while. No conversations. No notifications, no interruptions, just a few moments of unexpected silence. And in that silence they finally allowed themselves to think, really think, not about work, not about obligations, not about tomorrow's plans. They thought about life, about meaning, about the things that stay important, even when everything else changes. The longer they reflected, the more they noticed something unexpected. Many things they once worried about no longer seemed important. Many things they once chased no longer felt meaningful. Many goals they once believed would define their future had quietly faded into the background. Yet some memories remained, some lessons remained, some emotions remained, and suddenly they began to wonder why. Because your heart needs this right now. Because the things that survive the passage of time often reveal what mattered most from the beginning. Your soulmate was starting to see that truth. And listen to this. The awareness continued growing throughout the evening. It followed them everywhere. It would not leave. The more they examined it, the clearer it became. There were truths they had been avoiding, Not because those truths were painful, because those truths were important. Real significance can feel intimidating. It asks us to pay attention. It asks us to be honest. It asks us to stop pretending certain feelings do not exist. And honesty was becoming impossible to avoid. Because your heart needs this right now. Because some truths keep returning until we finally acknowledge them. Your soulmate was getting closer and closer to that moment. And listen carefully. As the evening turned into night, they sat quietly and thought about the entire day. The ordinary beginning, the unexpected memory, the repeating thoughts, the growing awareness. Somehow it all felt connected, like pieces of a puzzle slowly finding their place. Then it happened, the realization. The moment everything started making sense, not like a lightning bolt, not like a sudden explosion of insight, more like a sunrise, slow, clear, gentle, impossible to ignore. They realized they had spent too much time looking ahead, and not enough time appreciating everything that had already shaped them. Too much time rushing, too much time distracting themselves, too much time assuming that the most important things would always remain obvious. And suddenly, they understood something powerful. The most meaningful parts of life are often the easiest to overlook, because your heart needs this right now. Because appreciation usually arrives after reflection. Your soulmate was finally taking the time to reflect. Stay with me, because this realization led to something even bigger. The realization brought emotion. Not sadness, not regret, gratitude, deep gratitude. Gratitude for every lesson life had taught them. Gratitude for every challenge that helped them grow. Gratitude for the moments that shaped who they became. Gratitude for the people and experiences that left lasting marks on their journey. For the first time in a very long time, they were not focused on what was missing. They were focused on what truly mattered, and that changed everything. Because your heart needs this right now. Because gratitude changes the way we see our entire story. It changes what we notice. It changes what we value. It changes how we move forward. Your soulmate felt that shift happening inside them. And listen to this. The biggest surprise was not the realization itself. The biggest surprise was discovering how long that truth had been waiting. It had always been there, quietly, patiently, waiting for enough stillness, waiting for enough honesty, waiting for enough courage. And when those things finally arrived, the truth revealed itself naturally. No force, no struggle, no chasing, just understanding. Because your heart needs this right now. Because the deepest truths often appear when we stop trying so hard to find them. Your soulmate stopped searching and finally started seeing. And as they looked back on the entire day, one thought stayed with them more than any other. Maybe the most important moments in life are not the ones everyone notices. Maybe they are the quiet moments that happen inside us. The moments when we suddenly understand something that changes everything. Maybe today was one of those moments. Do not skip this part. Listen carefully. This message is for you, because after the realization earlier that day, your soulmate could not stop thinking about it. The thoughts followed them everywhere, no matter what they tried to focus on, no matter how many distractions appeared. Something inside them kept asking for attention. At first they assumed it was just another passing thought, the kind that appears for a few minutes and disappears forever. But this felt different. It stayed, it lingered, it kept returning. And the more they listened to it, the more they realized that it was trying to show them something they had overlooked for a very long time. What happened next surprised them even more, and once they saw it clearly, they could not unsee it. Stay with me. Because the next realization changed the way they looked at everything. This thought refused to leave. It kept returning, again and again, almost as if their heart was trying to reveal something important, something they had missed, something they had been too busy to recognize. Because your heart needs this right now. Because sometimes the most important discoveries are not new at all. They are truths that have been quietly waiting for us to notice them. Your soulmate was finally starting to notice. And listen to this. As evening moved closer, They found themselves thinking about different moments from their life, not only recent memories, older ones too. Memories from different years, different seasons, different versions of who they used to be. At first those memories seemed unrelated, random, scattered, like pieces from different stories. Yet the longer they reflected, the more a pattern began to appear, a pattern they had never seen before, and once they noticed it, they could not stop noticing it. Because your heart needs this right now. Because life often hides its greatest lessons until we step back and view the whole picture. Your soulmate was finally seeing that picture. Stay with me because what happened next changed everything. The pattern was not about success. It was not about failure. It was not about achievements or mistakes. It was about growth, pure growth. Every meaningful experience had changed them. Every lesson had shaped them. Every challenge had made them stronger. Every connection had taught them something valuable. And suddenly they understood something remarkable. The moments that transformed their life the most were rarely the moments they expected. The biggest lessons often arrived wrapped inside the quietest experiences, hidden in ordinary days, hidden in simple conversations, hidden in moments that seemed insignificant at the time. Because your heart needs this right now. Because significance often hides inside ordinary moments. Your soulmate was beginning to understand that truth. And listen carefully. As this understanding grew stronger, they started looking at certain memories in a completely different way. Instead of asking, why did this happen to me? They began asking, what was this trying to teach me? That small shift changed everything. Memories that once felt confusing suddenly carried meaning. Experiences that once seemed random suddenly revealed purpose. Moments they had barely noticed before suddenly looked important. For the first time in a long while, they were not viewing life through the lens of regret. They were not looking through the lens of uncertainty. They were looking through the lens of understanding. And understanding changes everything. Because your heart needs this right now. Because understanding transforms the way we carry our past. Your soulmate was experiencing that transformation in real time. And listen to this. The more they reflected, the more emotional they became. Not because they felt sad, not because they felt overwhelmed, because they felt grateful. Deeply grateful. Grateful for lessons they had never fully appreciated. Grateful for growth they had never fully noticed. Grateful for experiences they had once underestimated. Slowly, gratitude replaced confusion. Appreciation replaced doubt. And everything started feeling lighter, easier, clearer. Because your heart needs this right now. Because gratitude reveals blessings that uncertainty often hides from view. Your soulmate was beginning to discover those hidden blessings. Do not skip this next part, because this realization surprised them more than anything else. It arrived quietly, yet it carried enormous weight. Suddenly they realized that many of the experiences they had questioned for years had actually helped shape the person they had become. Without those moments, they would not have gained the same wisdom. Without those challenges, they would not have developed the same strength. Without those difficult chapters, they would not have gained the same perspective. The realization stopped them in their tracks, because for the first time they saw their life not as a collection of random events, but as a meaningful journey unfolding one lesson at a time. And listen to this. For a very long time they had focused on what they did not know. The unanswered questions, the uncertain outcomes, the mysteries they could not solve. Yet now their attention shifted somewhere completely different, toward the wisdom they had earned, toward the growth they had experienced, toward the lessons they had gained along the way. And that shift changed their entire outlook. Because when growth becomes your focus, life starts making more sense. Because your heart needs this right now. Because growth often becomes visible only after we have already lived through it. Your soulmate could finally see how much they had grown. And listen carefully. The discovery was not loud. There was no dramatic announcement, no grand event, no sudden explosion of clarity, just a quiet certainty settling into place. The kind of certainty that does not need proof. The kind of certainty that simply feels true. And that certainty showed them something important. Everything had been teaching them. every challenge, every victory, every disappointment, every surprise, every memory, every lesson, every chapter, all of it. And once they understood that, they stopped fighting their past. They stopped questioning every twist in the story. They stopped demanding answers before the timing was right. Instead, they began appreciating the journey itself, because your heart needs this right now, because peace often begins the moment we stop demanding explanations for every step along the path. Your soulmate was beginning to find that peace. Keep listening, because the next realization brought even deeper understanding. As the night became quieter, they reflected on everything one final time. The pattern was clear now, the lessons were visible now, the meaning was impossible to ignore, and suddenly they understood why this day felt so important. Not because something extraordinary happened around them, because something extraordinary happened within them. Their perspective shifted, their awareness deepened, their appreciation expanded. And once those things changed, everything else looked different too. Because your heart needs this right now. Because sometimes the biggest breakthroughs are invisible to everyone except the person experiencing them. Your soulmate had just experienced one of those breakthroughs, and as they sat quietly with this new understanding, one thought remained stronger than every other thought. Maybe life was never asking me to have all the answers. Maybe life was asking me to pay attention, to notice the lessons, to notice the growth, to notice the wisdom hidden inside everyday experiences. And maybe that is what I finally started doing. Do not scroll away. Listen carefully. This message is for you, because after this realization began unfolding inside your soulmate, they reached a point where keeping everything to themselves no longer felt possible. For hours they tried to continue their day as usual. They tried focusing on practical things. They tried returning to routine. They tried shifting their attention elsewhere. Yet something kept pulling them back. The realization, the feeling, the truth they were finally beginning to recognize. And listen to this. The strange part was not that they had discovered something new. The strange part was realizing that the truth had been quietly living inside their heart for a very long time. It was not arriving for the first time. It was finally being acknowledged. For months, maybe even years, certain thoughts had appeared unexpectedly. Certain feelings had surfaced without warning. Certain memories had returned again and again. At the time they ignored them, they brushed them aside. They told themselves they would think about it later. But now later had finally arrived. And what happened next would make everything even clearer. Stay with me, because the next part reveals why this realization refused to leave them alone. Each time they pushed those thoughts aside. Each time they told themselves they would think about them another day. Each time they returned to their normal routine, back to responsibilities, back to schedules, back to distractions. Yet that future moment never arrived, not until now, because your heart needs this right now. Because some truths are willing to wait until we are finally prepared to hear them. Your soulmate had finally reached that point. And listen to this. As evening slowly settled in, they found themselves sitting quietly. No television in the background, no endless scrolling, no noise filling every empty space. Just silence. At first the silence felt uncomfortable. Then it became revealing. Then it became impossible to ignore. It began asking questions, real questions. The kind of questions people often avoid because they know the answers might change something. What truly matters to me? Which experiences shaped me the most? Which lessons am I still carrying today? What truths have I been avoiding for far too long? The answers did not arrive instantly. They appeared slowly at first, then one after another. Because your heart needs this right now. Because honest questions have a way of leading directly to honest answers. Your soulmate was finally asking those questions. Stay with me, because what happened next brought everything together. One realization rose above all the others. One realization seemed to connect every memory, every lesson, every emotion, into a single understanding. They realized that life is not only about moving ahead, it is also about understanding what shaped us along the way, understanding what taught us, understanding what mattered. For years they believed strength meant never looking back, never pausing, never reflecting, but now they understood something very different. Real strength sometimes means recognizing the value of the journey itself, recognizing the lessons, recognizing the impact, recognizing the truth. And that truth brought an unexpected sense of peace. And listen carefully. The deeper they reflected, the more emotional they became. Not because they felt sorrow, not because they felt regret, because they felt grateful. Grateful for growth they once overlooked. Grateful for wisdom they once underestimated. Grateful for lessons that once felt difficult but now made perfect sense. Grateful for experiences that helped create the person they are today. Suddenly their life looked different. Not like a random collection of events, not like disconnected chapters, but like a story, a meaningful story, a story where every chapter contributed something important. Every challenge, every victory, every disappointment, every unexpected turn, all of it mattered, because your heart needs this right now. Because meaning often appears the moment we stop rushing past our own experiences. Your soulmate had finally slowed down enough to notice. And listen to this. As the realization continued expanding inside them, another feeling quietly emerged. Urgency. Not panic, not fear, a different kind of urgency. The feeling that certain truths should not remain hidden forever. The feeling that appreciation should not always stay silent. The feeling that honesty deserves to be expressed. For the first time in a very long while, they felt a strong desire to speak from the heart. Not because they wanted attention, not because they wanted recognition, because truth naturally wants to be shared once it has been fully understood. Because your heart needs this right now. Because meaningful realizations often inspire meaningful honesty. Your soulmate was beginning to experience that honesty. Do not skip this next part because it explains why everything suddenly felt different. The more they reflected, the more one question kept returning. Why did it take me so long to see this? Why did it take me so long to understand? The answer was surprisingly simple. Life gets busy. Responsibilities demand attention. Goals consume energy. Distractions fill every empty space. And sometimes people spend so much time chasing tomorrow that they forget to appreciate the lessons standing right beside them today. And listen to this. Your soulmate realized they had been doing exactly that. Always moving, always planning, always preparing for the next step. Yet now they were finally slowing down, finally listening, finally understanding, because your heart needs this right now. Because wisdom often arrives when we stop running long enough to hear it. Your soulmate had finally stopped. And as the night grew quieter, the realization became even stronger. Everything felt clearer. The confusion that once seemed overwhelming began fading. The questions that once felt heavy no longer carried the same weight. The uncertainty that once demanded answers began losing its power, not because every answer had appeared, because they no longer needed every answer. They had discovered something far more valuable: perspective. Perspective changes everything. It turns confusion into understanding. It turns frustration into appreciation. It turns uncertainty into peace. Your soulmate was experiencing that transformation firsthand. Because your heart needs this right now. Because perspective often becomes the bridge between struggle and wisdom. And listen carefully. By the end of the night, they understood exactly why they felt such a strong need to speak. Not because something dramatic happened outside of them. Because something meaningful happened within them. A breakthrough, a moment of clarity, a moment of acceptance, a moment where they finally stopped arguing with themselves and accepted what their heart had been trying to reveal all along. And that acceptance changed everything. Because your heart needs this right now. Because some of life's biggest moments are invisible to everyone except the person living them. Your soulmate had just lived through one of those moments. And as they sat quietly reflecting on everything they had learned, one final thought remained. Sometimes the biggest thing that happens is not an event. Sometimes it is a realization that changes the way you see your life, the way you see your journey, the way you see yourself. And once that realization arrives, Nothing looks exactly the same again. Don't scroll away. Listen carefully. This message is for you because after everything your soulmate experienced, the memories, the reflection, the unexpected clarity, and the emotional discoveries, they finally reached a moment where everything started making sense. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. Enough to change how they viewed themselves. Enough to change how they viewed their path. Enough to change how they understood their own heart. And listen to this. For a very long time, your soulmate believed that major changes would arrive dramatically. They expected huge announcements, obvious turning points, life-changing events that everyone would notice. Yet what happened recently taught them something completely different. The biggest transformations often happen quietly, deep inside us, invisible to everyone else. A shift in perspective, a moment of honesty, a realization that suddenly rearranges everything we thought we understood. Because your heart needs this right now. Because real transformation almost always begins within, before it ever becomes visible on the outside. Your soulmate had just experienced that transformation. And listen to this. As they reflected on everything they had learned, one realization continued growing stronger. For years they searched for certainty. They searched for explanations. They searched for answers. They searched for reasons why certain memories stayed meaningful and why certain lessons continued appearing throughout their life. Yet now they finally understood something important. Not every meaningful thing arrives with a complete explanation. Not every important lesson comes with immediate understanding. Sometimes meaning unfolds slowly. Sometimes understanding takes years. Sometimes wisdom arrives only after enough life has been lived. Because your heart needs this right now. Because growth often happens long before understanding catches up. Your soulmate was finally catching up to their own growth. And what happened next brought a sense of freedom they never expected. The realization felt surprisingly emotional, not because it was painful, because it was liberating. Imagine carrying a heavy bag for years, and then suddenly realizing you no longer need to hold it. That is how it felt. The pressure to understand everything disappeared. The pressure to control every outcome faded away. The pressure to force certainty into every situation finally loosened its grip. For the first time in a long while, they gave themselves permission to trust the journey, to trust the timing, to trust that not every answer needs to arrive immediately. And that trust changed everything. Because your heart needs this right now. Because peace often begins exactly where the need for control finally ends. Stay with me. Because the next realization would reveal something even deeper than they ever expected. Your soulmate was finally feeling a sense of peace. A real peace. The kind that does not arrive because every problem disappears. The kind that arrives because something inside finally settles. And listen to this. As the night moved forward, they found themselves looking back at different chapters of their life. Chapters they once judged too harshly. Chapters they questioned again and again. Chapters they wished had unfolded differently. For years they focused on what went wrong. For years they focused on what they could not understand. For years they focused on the parts of the story that seemed unfinished. Yet now those same chapters looked completely different. They could finally see the lessons hidden inside them. They could finally see the growth hidden inside them. They could finally see the purpose woven through them. What once felt confusing now felt meaningful. What once felt frustrating now felt educational. What once felt random now felt connected to a larger picture. Because your heart needs this right now. Because perspective has a remarkable way of turning old wounds into wisdom. Your soulmate was beginning to discover that wisdom. Stay with me because the next realization surprised them even more. As they continued reflecting, they noticed something they had never fully understood before. Every difficult chapter had left them with something valuable. Every challenge had taught them patience. Every disappointment had strengthened their perspective. Every unexpected turn had guided them toward a lesson they needed. None of it had been wasted. None of it had been meaningless. And for the first time, they stopped seeing certain experiences as mistakes and started seeing them as teachers. That simple shift changed everything.